Hi, welcome to my channel. I guess this is how I talk right now. This isn't my first attempt at YouTube. I started YouTube once and it was very vlog-like when I first started traveling for modeling. I was in Singapore and I thought, why not? But the thing is, like, back then it was much more of just recording daily life, but I didn't really have much to say. So the reason why I'm starting my YouTube this year is because I actually do think I have things that I would love to share. What I would like to start with is, I'm not sure, there's a lot of brainstorming that I've had with a friend where we could definitely, do talks and talk about how to adapt to the city. But something that I find, I guess, close to heart is me wanting to share my dissertations. So I am in university right now in Paris and I am writing a lot of dissertations. It's definitely been a process. I've learned just how imprecise I am with my words, with my definitions. What is a definition? But also it's such a fun process. It's such a fun process of being asked to define things that we've taken for granted. So the first one that I want to share with you today is nos illusions sont-elles simplement des erreurs? So our illusions, are they simply errors? I think this is to theme because this is going to be my first vlog. So how I'm planning to do this is I've been talking to people in this language app and they're like, oh yeah, it's really cool. Thank you. They're so supportive. So my plan is to basically read it in French and then I'll explain it in English. And I don't think that I'll be doing subtitles at this point yet because I'm trying to keep it really simple. But I hope to share the ideas that I came up with during this year, and hopefully, I'm not saying that this is something that everyone should oh yeah, this is how you write a dissertation. No, I'm in first year. This one I got 10.5 out of 20 because I didn't even manage to get my third part in. This was the first dissertation that I had in a hall sur place, which is in person, so you didn't have time to really have your resources available to you. It was just here's a question, here's 4 hours, figure it out, and then show us what you got. And yeah, I'm sure I got a bonus because I'm a foreign student and he's nice, but I got a lot of comments of interesting to develop, interesting, reformulate, and I think it's definitely something to do with my level of French. So I started French June last year, and yeah, so I'm gonna start. I rewrote it so that because it's kind of extremely difficult to read the writings in a hall after 3 hours of brainstorming. You're cold, you're looking at the clock. But yeah, so I'm gonna start and then I guess we'll figure it out where I start translating it in English and where I leave it in French, just because it's a lot to translate everything and I'm not gonna stay for that. I mean, if you're into it, let me know. Okay, so let's begin. Nos illusions sont-elles simplement des erreurs? Dans le film La vie est belle de Roberto Benigni, numbers, 1997, un père a créé un jeu pour masquer la déportation à son fils. Ce jeu est une illusion construite par le père pour garder l'innocence et pour protéger son fils. Il y avait un jour où les nazis ont déclaré que les enfants doivent prendre une douche. En sachant que cela signifie la mort de son fils, le père retourne à son jeu pour avoir la coopération de son fils pour qu'il se cache. À ce moment-là, le fils voulait abandonner le jeu. Le père désespéré le lui a déconseillé, en disant qu'il avait le choix de retourner à sa vie avant, mais sans son précieux prix. Étant donné que cette illusion est construite soigneusement par le père et a été décisivement acceptée par son fils, cela souligne la question que si nos illusions sont simplement des erreurs. So, my remark was bon exemple. So basically, I used the film La Vie est belle by Roberto Benigni, and it's about deportation into internment camps. And my argument was that considering that an illusion is constructed by the dad, and it is received decisively by the son, could we actually say that illusions are only errors? Obviously, my case is not. So I'm going to continue with my introduction, which at this point, after giving an amorce, which is a way into the discussion, I am going to try to clarify my definitions, which are a bit clumsy, but une erreur se produit quand on prend pour vrai ce qui est faux. Ce qui est vrai est ce qui correspond à la réalité. Ce qui est faux ne lui correspond pas. Une illusion est basée sur l'apparence de la réalité. Une apparence est obvie, le plus habituel est ce qu'on voit. Une illusion est donc basée sur notre sens de vue et n'est pas fondée par la raison qui fonde la réalité. Dans la langue courante, l'erreur ou mistake en anglais prend au sens d'être se tromper, mais également d'être trompé. Si une erreur se produit en dépit d'un agent sans le savoir, une illusion est donc un agent qui se tromper par son défaillance de raisonnement. C'est quand il prend l'apparence pour la réalité. D'un autre côté, pour être trompé, il faut avoir un trompeur. Comme la réalité objectivement existe en soi, les erreurs peuvent venir intentionnellement d'un agent trompeur, c'est-à-dire ce qui crée des erreurs. Peut-on dire que la théorie du complot est une illusion? Une illusion créée avec l'intention, avec une fin visée, qui est de tromper. Pour dire qu'une illusion est simplement des erreurs, on dit que les erreurs existent sans application, que l'illusion se produit sans cause, sans pensant. Mais une illusion existe nécessairement avec un agent qui l'imagine, et les erreurs sont les réalisations des effets de se tromper et d'être trompé. Il faut avoir un agent qui produit des erreurs et un autre qui prend l'illusion pour vrai. Encore, pour prendre une chose pour vraie, c'est sa correspondance entre une idée et une proposition avec la réalité. Et donc, ni erreur ni illusion existent sans agent. L'illusion est donc pas purement des erreurs, mais aussi en comptant l'agent qui les produit. Cependant, la question reste, est-ce que l'illusion se produit par les erreurs d'un agent défaillant ou un agent intentionnel? C'est-à-dire, est-ce que l'illusion est une réalité partielle ou une réalité fabriquée? So, it's a long introduction apparently. Apparently that's what we're supposed to do. But basically, I define an error as something that is something that happens or is produced when we take something for truth when it is something false for truth, and it is true when it corresponds to reality, and it is false when it does not correspond to reality. An illusion is based on an appearance of reality. It was a quote that I read by Aristotle, and I didn't quote him because I didn't have an exact reference point, so it's better to just say like, oh yeah, this is what it is, right? But okay, and an appearance is obvious, habituel, a habit, something that we're just used to, and something that we see. So therefore, an illusion is based on what we see, our sense of sight, but not based on reason, which founds reality. And now reading back, it's kind of like a baseless definition because it's just because I say so kind of vibes. And then I did this thing. I was under pressure, but I equated error to mistake and not error to error. And I equated error to mistake because to be mistaken is to be when you say se tromper, it's kind of like someone fooled you, or like, est-ce que je veux pas me tromper, like I don't want to be mistaken. So it's kind of like that is kind of a, and once you learn French, you realize there's a lot of responsibility when there's reflexive verbs. But basically, I'm just saying that here a mistake happens when we are mistaken by someone else, but also um, but also oh, when we are mistaken by ourselves, and also when we are we wow, au sens d'être se tromper mais également d'être trompé. So we have been, someone has tricked us, or that we've tricked ourselves. In a philosophical way, it sounded really cool, but I can see why I now got a 10.5. But yeah, and he actually made a comment, vraiment, like, is that really like how, what it means in English? But I guess if you think about it, like, to be mistaken, either you didn't have, someone is trying to trick you, or someone misled you, or you were misled by yourself in terms of bias, projection, intent. So maybe I am extremely right. So my argument then becomes, si une erreur se produit en dépit d'un agent sans le savoir, une illusion est donc un agent. Ah, okay. So if an error happens despite the agent, by the fact that he lacks knowing something or knowledge, then the agent is mistaken by his défaillance, so his lacking, his inability in a way, oh, de raisonnement, his like lack in, so his limitation in his knowledge or reasoning because he lacks the information. C'est quand il prend l'apparence pour la réalité dont, so that's when he takes what he sees for reality. So it's not much about what is happening in his mind or how he's reasoned it, but based on just what he sees. I don't want to just say superficial, but it's just based on the sense of sight. De notre côté, pour être trompé, il faut avoir un trompeur. And on the other hand, to be misled, you have to have someone who misleads. Comme la réalité objectivement existe en soi, like reality existing on soi, so it's like existing despite us. It exists metaphysically, you know, it'll keep going on by itself. It has an existence on its own. See, like now trying to explain en soi is like very tricky because I don't want to put my foot in my mouth because I've been staring at this word for 3 months. But my tutor wrote on the top like that is, you know, discutable, so something that, you know, it's not really founded, what I'm saying. Comme la réalité objectivement, nanana, les erreurs peuvent venir intentionnellement d'un agent trompeur. So as reality exists on its own, errors can come intentionally from a person who wants to mislead someone else. It's really difficult to say like agent trompeur, the direct translation, or maybe I'm just limited at this point to be exact, but it's not like a liar. It's in a way yes, and it's not manipulator, but it's much more about just not giving the full truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth kind of thing. Just, and it's there's a nuance to things in French, a lot of nuance, and this is kind of like mid-burn, it's like medium rare. Okay, c'est-à-dire ce qui crée des erreurs, the person that creates errors. But can we say that conspiracy theory is an illusion? Okay. Une illusion créée avec l'intention, avec une fin visée qui est de tromper. So here I'm trying to say, I guess what I'm trying to say with like conspiracy theory is just this idea of like, can you say it's an illusion if people believe in it so strongly that it is reality to them? So here I'm starting to get into the part of like people who want to recreate reality in a sense, but not really. So before it's just like, oh, I've been tricked into this illusion, but this is the people who remodel reality in a way. So an illusion in this sense is one that is created with intention, with a goal in mind, which is to deceive. I guess tromper, we can say deceive. Yeah. Yeah, okay. To say that an illusion is simply errors is to indicate that errors exist without application. That an error, that an illusion se produit, that exists, that comes into being without cause, without a thinker, a person who has to come up with this illusion. Mais une illusion existe nécessairement avec un agent qui l'imagine. But an illusion is one that exists. But it is necessary for an agent. It is necessary for an agent to imagine this illusion for it to exist. And these errors are the effects of this realization of to trick or to be tricked. You have to have an agent to produce these errors and another to take these errors for truth. Again, to take a thing that is true, it is its correspondence between the idea and a proposition with reality. Okay, now that I'm saying it in English, it sounds a lot cooler, but let me try to explain. So, because I said that my definition of reality is when something corresponds to reality, then it's true. So then the thing is that you need the correspondence, and the only person that can create this correspondence is an agent. It's a person who thinks, and later on, like, my tutor writes like pensant instead of agent, because agent, there's not really much of an action happening. But because I said that reality is true when something is true when it corresponds to reality. Therefore, who makes this judgment of this correspondence? It's an agent. It's not just an error that exists in air without a person who qualifies if it's true or false. So then in this sense, then the illusion now can be also taken for truth as long as this idea or proposition corresponds to this reality. So therefore, without error and without illusion, neither error nor illusion can exist without an agent. Illusion is therefore not purely errors, but also taking into account the agent who creates them. Yet, the question remains, est-ce que l'illusion produit pas? Okay, are the illusions created by produced by the errors of a limited agent défaillant, or an intentional agent? That is to say, is illusion a partial reality or a fabricated reality? So if it is a partial reality, that is because the agent is limited in his knowledge. If it is a fabricated reality, then it is an agent who is intentional about the illusion. Here I got the comment that it's interesting, but I need to reformulate more precisely. Yeah. Okay, so let's continue with my first part. Une illusion se produit quand un agent se trompe à cause de sa défaillance. Le résultat est une réalité partielle. L'agent de ce cas n'est pas conscient de sa propre limitation par rapport à sa connaissance. Selon Descartes, dans Méditation 4, la cause formelle d'une erreur est un mauvais usage de libre arbitre qui se rencontre la privation de connaissance. L'une de ces privations de connaissance vient de sa difficulté d'être attentif à une chose qui n'est pas présente. Cela est amplifié par seeing is believing. L'illusion est donc une réalité parce qu'elle ne prend compte que les choses présentes et perceptibles. En outre, il y a aussi la difficulté d'oublier les préjugés de son enfance. L'enfance est le moment où le sujet ne remarque pas la différence entre lui-même et le monde extérieur. Son raisonnement est donc trop lié à son propre corps. Les sensations influent trop sur son entendement de la réalité. Selon Kant, dans la critique de la raison pure, l'erreur se produit quand l'individu ne remarque pas l'influence de ses préjugés. À cause de cette ignorance partielle, un individu se trompe quand il prend une chose sans savoir la cause de ses actions. En restant trop lié à ses perceptions corporelles, l'erreur est commise par un individu qui prend une décision avec une raison incomplète. On a abordé l'illusion comme une réalité partielle, quand elle consiste des erreurs qui se produisent par l'agent défaillant. Pourtant, une réalité partielle ne se valide pas. Comme tous les hommes ne... tous les hommes... Tous les hommes... Ouh. Comme tous les hommes ne contiennent pas l'entendement complet, cela indique que le monde réel est une véritable illusion. N'est pas l'homme capable de se rendre compte de sa propre finitude et avec cela son impuissance face à une réalité infinie, infinie au sens de grandeur et ses possibilités par rapport à lui? Okay, so yeah, I got a lot of reformulé. I can see why it's really conversational. It's not very well constructed. But being nice to myself, I think the ideas are still pretty interesting. So basically, this is where I argue that an illusion is produced when an agent is mistaken because of his own defiance, lack, limitation. The result is a partial reality. The agent in this case is not aware of his limitations in relation to his knowledge. According to Descartes in the fourth meditation, the formal cause of an error is the bad use of free will, which come against the lacking, la privation de connaissance, the lacking of knowledge. So one of this lacking or limitation of knowledge comes from the difficulty of being attentive to things that are not just present and in front of you. And then I kind of use seeing is believing as like, you know, a mode of thinking of no one really believes anything unless they see it. I didn't really explain much into it because, again, I was extremely pressed for time and I just wanted to get as many words out as possible because at around like an hour and a half I was still like toying between that and going into commentaire, and I was just like, that ship has sailed, you need to focus on doing this dissertation. But I was really stuck for the longest time. So although these ideas sound cool, I think they sound super cool, they only came to me like almost at the 2 hour mark of 4 hours. So I heard it's normal to kind of take an hour to think about what you want to write, but again, it's in French. One, you're doing great. Alright, so illusion est donc une réalité parce qu'il ne prend pas compte les choses présentes et perceptibles. So this illusion is therefore a reality because it does not take into account anything. It only takes into account things that are present and perceptible. So just like whatever's in front of you, again, without reasoning. And this is something that these are some of the prejudices that we can't get rid of from our childhood. And our childhood is the moment when the subject, us as thinking beings, very debatable, the subject in this term as a thinking being, cannot tell the difference between himself and the exterior world. Because when you're younger, you don't really understand your ego, in the boundaries of your ego. You think that, wow, this is tragic, but you know, you think that like your will is the world. It's very Hegel in a way. That's a whole nother idea that just, yeah. So it's basically just like, you know, you cry, your mom comes and gets you. You do this, your needs hopefully were met, or if they weren't met, then you know, you construct a whole nother different relationship to reality. So then his reasoning is then too linked to his body. The sensations then influences too much his understanding of reality. And then according to Kant in the critique of pure reason, error is caused when an individual cannot notice, who do not notice the influence of these prejudices. And because of this partial ignorance, the individual is mistaken and he makes a choice without knowing the real cause of his actions. Because if you don't have the full understanding of why you're doing things, then you're kind of just doing things blindly. And it goes back to Descartes saying that you have free will, but if your free will is based on a limited or not a complete picture, is it really free will, or are you just misguided? What else? Okay. To be too linked to your bodily perceptions, the error is committed by an individual which takes an action based on incomplete reason. We said that. We have approached illusion as a partial reality. Yeah, as errors that are created by a defiant agent. I just hesitate translating defiant as lacking, but just limited agent. Yet a partial reality does not, ne se valide pas, I don't think it's like a great way of saying, but basically saying it does not validate itself. It doesn't make sense in a way, because all men have no man has a complete understanding of the world. No one. Don't argue about God, because that's a whole nother discussion, but no man has the complete understanding of the world. No one understands reality in its whole complete form, in terms of having complete knowledge of every single thing, every single truth in every single situation. Okay, because if you were to say that an illusion is a partial reality, then, and that since no person has complete understanding of the world, that would basically mean that the real world is an illusion. Because if you take that as the definition, then the inverse is true, that would mean that the real world is actually an illusion. But isn't man able to realize his own finitude, and with that his own powerlessness in the face of an infinite reality? Infinite in the sense of the grandness of its possibilities in relationship to him. So I can see why I need to reformulate, but the idea remains of like, it doesn't. So the thing that I learned about transitions is that you argue to a certain point, be as strong as you can, and then it's a schizophrenic activity where you go, but wait a minute, like this one point of view doesn't complete the picture, so then you move on to the second point of view. Okay, let's start my second part. Une illusion se produit quand un agent produit les erreurs pour sa propre conservation. Le résultat est une réalité fabriquée. L'agent, dans ces cas, est conscient de sa propre limitation par rapport au monde et il choisit d'adapter. Selon Nietzsche, dans le gai savoir, l'intellect produit des erreurs qui lui conviennent. C'est dans cette illusion qu'il peut survivre le monde réel. Selon Pascal, l'imagination est la matrice des erreurs. Imaginer, c'est être ouverte aux possibilités. Dans le croisement de la culture de manifesting, les gens imaginent la vie selon leur exploit en dépassant leur réalité actuelle. À cause de la motivation conservatrice, un agent agit selon une réalité souhaitable en dépit de la réalité actuelle. Mais cela n'indique pas une chimère puisque le monde, d'une certaine façon, change au fil du temps. So, in this case, we're going to the person who's intentional. An illusion is produced when an agent creates errors for his proper conservation. The result is a fabricated reality. Of course, I could have had more time, gone deeper into it in terms of talking about how the conservation of self is the dad trying to, for himself as a dad, to take care of the innocence of his child. So for him to maintain his sense of reality, or maintain, because, oh, this is gonna get really deep, but for him to be able to bear with life, conservation of self is not so much just eating. That's the basic needs. Of course, we need all of that, but it's also like, how can you live with life in a way is also part of conservation of self. So in this sense, I use Nietzsche to say that, you know, it is a man, this is an agent who is aware of his limitation in relation to the world, and he chooses to adapt. And Nietzsche says in Le Gai Savoir that intellect is to produce errors which suits oneself. And this is the only way that we can survive the real world. because it is harsh. You know, the argument that it lives outside of us, we can't control it, but we're just players. And according to Pascal, imagination is the mastery of errors, because to imagine is to be open to possibilities. And in the rise of manifestation culture, I argue that people imagine their lives based on their hopes in en dépassant, like despite like moreover than their actual reality. And it is this motivation to conserve one's life that the agent is acting like it treats reality based on this wishful reality, a reality that they want despite what is actually in front of them. But it's not a pipe dream in the sense that the world does change over time. And that's why we have evolution, revolution, and things that, you know, comes into circles. You can't come into full circle with things if it never changes. There would be no history because there wouldn't be anything to record, anything to mark changes in time. And my tutor added like, and maybe also, so besides like that the world changes over time, he added like, but also maybe thanks to these imaginary creations. And I thought that was like so smart, and this is why I really like this professor. He would say stuff like, he's extremely bright, and he knows it. But basically, like, you know, some things it's just like, is nature perfect? And then it's just like, then he makes a reference to like French. It's like la parfait and parfait, and it's basically like the word parfait is usually related to past, and like things that are only like, there's nothing in the present that is perfect. It's things that are in the past. So then it's just like a play on word languages. Brilliant. I'm taking his 8 a.m. class next semester just because like I'm just like I can't let go. I found a really good teacher. But 8 a.m. Okay, so let's this is my tiny third part because I didn't have time. Okay. Tant qu'une réalité partielle ne vérifie pas et une réalité fabriquée n'est pas une chimère, peut-on dire que l'illusion est plutôt la relation naturelle entre les mondes et un agent? So, since a partial reality is not verified, doesn't make sense, and since a fabricated reality is not a pipe dream, so therefore not an illusion, so these two are debunked. Can we then not say that an illusion is rather the natural relationship between the world and the agent? And at the time when I came out from this exam, I was like, dang, that was really good. But now, like, reading it, I think there's a lot to develop on it. I do think it's really cool in terms of like trying to find the blurred lines. But I will admit, like, in my correction, it's over there. In my correction, there's a lot of like, you know, don't mix up definitions, don't mix up concepts. But I do think like debunking both of them was a real. It's so weird, like debunking this thing that you've taken like hours to build is so satisfying. But coming to the conclusion of like then is the only way for us to relate to reality is through illusion. And then he added conclusion or start of a third part. And he'll never get an answer because we're gonna do other dissertations. But I hope, I mean, it's gonna be fun figuring out how to edit this to try to make it interactive and interesting. I personally really like a lot of YouTube channels now that I just play and I like go along with things. So it's not gonna be super interactive and like, you know, watch me like add like sound effects everywhere. But I am thinking of putting in some videos in between just to give it a bit of a mood. But yeah, I hope that this was informative or somewhat interesting. If not, maybe a good accompaniment to breakfast or dinner. And yeah, thank you for watching, and I hope you have a good Christmas and a good New Year, even though this is probably gonna come out after the New Year's. But thank you. Bye.